Hello and welcome to Prince George Up Close. I'm your host, Grant Bachand, and today we have Councillor Garth Frizzell to have a one-on-one conversation about all the things that he's doing in our community. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, doing well, Grant. How are you?
Doing very well. So I want to talk to you about your role in council and all the things you're doing. You've been elected 3 times from what I understand, and that must have been a long time of serving your community and being very involved. What kind of draws you to municipal government?
You know, actually, when you put it that way, it's kind of amazing to look back that in 3 terms I've become the 3rd longest serving person on council. It really goes quickly. Back in 2008, I was just finishing off my year as the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I'd gotten drawn to Prince George for the university. I started a tech company, and that drew me into the business community because the business community is so tight here. And then an election was coming up just after I was finished up with the presidency, and I thought this is an opportunity to bring some new ideas in, to get transparency improved, to get access to information improved, to get our connections to the rest of the world improved. So those have been the 3 major themes I've been following, and I tell you, each term is so very different. It's been 3 different mayors, 3 different city managers, 3 different councils.
Had a bit of shifting throughout your time there, hey?
Oh, tremendous, yeah. Gotten exposure to a lot of different perspectives.
What, with all those different times that you've been on council, like you've probably got tons of things done. What are one of the things that you're most proud of and you look back and you're like, I'm really glad that this happened when I was there?
Well, the one that makes the most impact on people and will for the next 20 years is getting the gas tax. So the federal government gives municipalities money, very little, because we're not recognized in the Constitution, so it's an elaborate way of getting money to municipalities. But of the OECD countries, we're the lowest of the 12 in the taxation powers that municipalities have. And that may seem like not a big deal, but the impact it has is that over the last 50 years, we've become responsible for 60% of Canada's infrastructure.
Wow.
So how do you get that paid for just using property taxes? It seems ludicrous. And what we've done across Canada is worked to get taxation collected by the federal government decentralized down, brought to municipalities. And we don't want to have to apply for it. We want funding that is predictable, that's long-term, and that doesn't need an application. And that's the gas tax is the one tax that does that. All across Canada, depending on the size of your population, you get a check every year. And for Prince George, that's $3 million a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what is the gas tax? So when I think about it, I'm not quite familiar with this one.
So when you pay for your gasoline at the pumps, there's an extra tax that gets added onto that goes straight to the federal government. That gets collected into a pot. And now that pot is size A, and then the federal government has picked size B, which is smaller than size A, and that gets directed straight out to municipalities all across Canada. Now, up until about 2 years ago, that was done at the discretion of the federal government, but now it's a budget line item for them. Yeah, the federal government can change its budget anytime it wants, but they've said this is going to be a permanent thing. It's going to be something we can count on every year, and on top of that, we got it indexed, so that means it increases with inflation. That means over the next 10 years, another $20 million for Prince George.
Wow.
Critical stuff.
Yeah.
Critical stuff.
And lots of times when money is given to organizations or even, I would assume, municipalities, lots of times it's earmarked for things. You have to put it towards this or that. Is this gas tax, is it more free range so you can use it for other things, or does it have its own earmarks in a way?
Well, it does have ranges of uses that you can put it to, but it's become wider and wider all the time. So we asked for it to be increased in scope, and we've got it. In Prince George, for a lot of years, we needed that for our roads, and we need $7 million a year just to keep the roads the way they are. So we took that $3 million, and for a lot of years we just directed that straight into the roads. And what that's meant is over the last couple of years, people coming up to me and saying, what happened with the roads? They've just gotten so much better. Where it used to be that springtime was pothole time.
Yeah, I've lost more than probably one front end to the
I
potholes of
lost
Prince
the
George.
back end, yeah.
When I think about infrastructure and I think about Prince George, that seems to be one of the big conversations, is how we can deal with our aging buildings. And currently we have 2 referendums up. We have the Fire Hall 1 and we have the Four Seasons pool, which is due on October 28th in this year, to have a referendum of kind of rebuilding those buildings, tearing them down and rebuilding them. So with that, what is the impact of replacing these buildings on like Prince George and the community? Like, is that an increase in taxes if we end up going forward with that, or what is that?
Yeah, so the background to it is when Prince George amalgamated, we brought in large communities from around the area. And it meant that while we've got pretty close to the population of the city of Victoria, we're 13 to 14 times the size of Victoria. We were built with large thoroughfares expecting dramatic increases in population. So maintaining infrastructure is a constant thing for us. Our staff are totally focused on that. We got the below ground to a point where it's maintaining itself. You know, you might have noticed on taxes it's 0% increases for this whole term because it's self-funded now. Then we started looking at above ground, and what that means is the buildings. And you know, in the 60s, we had that huge expansion. Like many communities all across Canada, we put in brand new roads, water, and sewer. And now it's 50 years later, and all of that is coming to term, and it all needs to be replaced. So we've got a very careful computerized schedule mapping exactly when things need to be redone and when, and how we can get benefits by doing 2 things at the same time.
Okay.
But it's the same with buildings. So our buildings were done at the same time, a lot of them, and now they're coming to the end of their life. So yes, what it means is whenever there's a physical structure that needs to be built, we go out looking for grants that'll help support it. We look for the granting opportunity of the day, and we apply and we seek help, because these are expensive buildings. So look at our police station, $50 million.
Yeah.
If we just had another 10 or 20,000 more people, then we could have gotten more subsidies for it. But you know, different buildings have different availabilities of support that come from people, from different orders of government. With the pool, it's reaching the end of its natural life. And much like the police station, the costs of the police station before we replaced it were starting to be outrageous. You know, when those cells, the cells where prisoners were kept, they were so far behind what you were required to provide by law that any time the RCMP could have said, look, you are required now to redo these cells, and the cost would have been astronomical.
Yeah.
Similarly, we've got a fire hall that probably doesn't meet fire code.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah.
The irony almost.
Absolutely.
So what do you do in a case like that? Yes, we get by, and the firefighters have gotten by for a lot of years. But it's an old building. It doesn't meet the needs of modern firefighting, and we've got options now. And so what we want to do is put this out to the people of Prince George, because it'll mean an increase in taxes for many years, depending on the option that gets put forward. And this is their choice.
It's $10 million for Fire Hall 1, from what I'm, if I'm right, and then it's $38 million for the Four Seasons pool. Am I correct on that?
I don't have the numbers in front of me right now.
But around about there, around
yeah.
48 million or so. So those sort of things, when we build them, especially when we looked at the Four Seasons pool, there was a lot of ideas put forward to you, including bringing it over and merging it with the other pool that's in the community and making that one bigger. But the council ended up wanting to go and put its own building out there. And why? What was the rationale, I guess, behind not kind of merging the two together and putting a whole new building downtown?
Well, you know, there's 2 schools of thought, and that's you centralize all services in one location and the people go to the services. But in a city as large as Prince George, as soon as you start doing that, you've got some serious problems. That means that people in other regions don't have as quick access. So the the pool downtown means that there's lots of access for downtown people to reach it, people who are coming downtown for other reasons. You know, the number one facility for visits number one city facility for visits in Prince George is the library, right next door to that Four Seasons pool. So the downtown location, yes, we could have proposed something out by the aquatic center, but that means that it's one centralized location, and then you start getting into issues. Right now, we can do the maintenance at different times so that we always have some place where people can swim in Prince George.
Yeah.
If you have one facility, would that be the same? Maybe so, maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of moving on, looking at your role right now, you were recently elected as the third vice president of the the Federation of Canadian Municipalities.
Yes.
What does that mean for you personally, and also for our community with that very successful election?
Well, yeah, really happy with it. So the FCM has about 2,000 member communities, represents more than 90% of the Canadian population. Most of the provinces have 90 to 100% of the municipalities that are members of FCM. So imagine if we want some changes done federally to policy that impacts municipalities. If we didn't have the FCM, we could go as a community one-on-one and ask our MP to help us out to meet people. And you know, the mayor's gone and done that. He's gone and met with the prime minister even. But on a sustained basis for a long period of time, if you want infrastructure dollars to change, you've got to apply pressure strategically and continuously. So what FCM lets us do is go to Ottawa, and we do this every November. We meet with, this last year, about 150 of the MPs.
Wow.
And we point out that we are one of the few groups across Canada that has membership in every riding in Canada. We say, look, these are the needs of municipalities, these are the needs of your voters, because their voters are our voters. And we can point out, this is why we need an anti-poverty strategy, this is why we need a national housing strategy, this is why we need the infrastructure changes. And we go and do that in French and English. We do that in the prairies, Ontario, Quebec, Atlantic Canada, Northern Canada. The message gets repeated again and again. So what it means is that a message like Prince George needs infrastructure dollars is nice, but Canadian municipalities need $200 billion worth of infrastructure.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jeez.
this is a big deal.
That's a number.
Yeah, we all built in the 60s, it's all coming due.
Yeah.
And when we put that together as one problem that needs to be solved, then they sit up and take notice. And they have. You know, the governments, federal governments have been very responsive over the last 5 years. It's been a 10-year campaign, but now they know. And every year when the budget's being read, the FCM gets mentioned.
Nice.
We get invited into the lockup. We get consulted. And the biggest piece is those federal and provincial tables talking about how to deal with an issue now are federal, provincial, and municipal tables.
It's kind of interesting is when I was reading about the FCM and I was kind of looking into it, I kind of was thinking about it and thinking about my poli-sci training. And the municipalities are under the provincial legislation. From what I'm understanding, provincial governments control what municipalities look like. And so for a national organization, which is representing a provincially legislated bodies, it seems like there would be probably a lot of varying opinions on what you can and can't get done from the federal government, since they've delegated those powers to the provinces.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But the thing that changes it is probably the internet, the communications, when the mayor of Vancouver is standing up and saying, look, communities from Prince George to Iqaluit to Toronto to Halifax need to have better transit systems. Well, the federal government is not going to stop and say, well, actually, you're regulated by this or that, the other. It simply doesn't work for the Canadian voter to say, look, we can't do it because of regulation. No, that's not a good enough answer anymore. And that's the beauty of it, is we can get the needs of local government brought to the national scale really effectively. And I tell you, municipalities are at their highest level of influence in Canadian history right now. Our last meeting in Ottawa, where the election took place, it was a gathering of the largest number of elected officials in Canadian history.
Wow, really?
Yeah, almost
Cool.
3,000 people were in that. 3,000.
Wow. So that means that there's lots of opportunities, not just to lobby government, but also to, with 3,000 people in a room, it's opportunities for communities to work together and network and sort of figure out ways that like different people can work with each other, I would assume as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the Union of Quebec Municipalities put forward a resolution on dealing with the softwood lumber dispute.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Got up there right away and said, thank you. Tweeted out, thank you. Facebooked out, thank you. And then the resolution came forward. And I tell you, it would be, Prince George put a resolution forward, and that'll be helpful, and that'll be good as a supportive thing. But for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to take the Quebec resolution and push it to the federal government, I tell you, there's tremendous influence. And being able to say we speak for communities all over Canada, that's huge.
And softwood lumber being such a major issue right now, especially in northern BC, and you don't really think of Quebec as being an ally in that, so it's awesome to see us pulling together. I wanted to kind of shift gears here a little bit and sort of look at the tech industry, because you came from, you were talking about earlier how you started your own company in the tech industry. You've been helping out Prince George in that sort of way. My thought is, it's interesting is I don't really think of Prince George as a tech hub, but there's a lot of tech companies here in our community that are growing. And I've been hearing a lot of stories like the fact that Google recruits programmers and coders from UNBC, and they're moving down to Silicon Valley and they're going down there. Why are we not hearing more about this tech industry? Like, am I wrong, or there is a bustling tech industry here in Prince George, right?
Yeah, there is, and it's a good mix of the micro ones that are being supported at HubSpot by the Innovation Central Society. And the fact is, they do have a site downtown, right at 3rd and Quebec. A co-working site, a business incubator style of location. And you see the 1-person or 2-person businesses starting there, growing bigger, getting larger, and then getting their own spaces. And so things like Spark Geo, which started small but now has clients down in San Francisco, the Apples and the Googles that you're talking about. Well, when you talk to Will, these are the types of people that he's meeting. I think the fascinating part is that UNBC puts out these computer science graduates, and an undergraduate degree here is as good as an undergraduate degree anywhere. Those graduates are automatically getting some interest from Northern Health. Was one of the little known stories is that Northern Health has a significant software development group here, right on 3rd Avenue, about a half a block away from the HubSpot.
Okay.
I long thought that 3rd Avenue could be changed to Innovation Avenue, just because of all of the locations that are there. But I think the thing that's going to be a real win for Prince George is what Iceland succeeded at, and that is hosting data centers. So data centers are critical now to the internet. You need to have them. And what those companies are looking for out of California and out of Texas, they're looking for sites where there's green energy. If you want to comply with corporate social responsibility guidelines in the States, for a data center, have green energy. And Prince George, #1 in bioenergy. We've got the wind farm nearby. We've got the Williston Reservoir nearby. And that's producing the types of energy we need.
These sort of data centers coming to Prince George, they could create more opportunities for then sort of the network of smaller businesses to sort of come in to help service those sort of things, I would assume. You put one big main industry in, and then Al's computer shop opens up to help this one aspect of that company, and so on and so forth, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, a reasonable sized data center would be a $350 million investment in the city.
Wow.
Oh, it's pretty significant. And tomorrow or the next day, Google could come up with 3 semi-trucks full of servers, plug it in, and they would be ready to go to get it started. That's all you need to get a data center started. And they've got the mobile ones, it could happen. But what we're poised to, and what I think is a huge opportunity for us, is to get data centers located. We have the industrial land, we've got everything they're looking for here. And the geotectonic stability. There hasn't been a significant earthquake here in a very long time.
Is that one of the key things for them, is they don't want to go into an earthquake sort of area?
Stability is the big thing. Yeah, you want a place where you don't have to think about 99.999% uptime.
Yeah.
That's what they want, and that's what we can give.
And it seems like, especially with how the internet is being such a global sort of thing, that you have people in Russia doing coding, or you have people in London doing coding, and all for products that are being sold in the U.S. That it's a very much a global sort of thing. You don't need to. They would want to have it out of the United States, and so for like infrastructure security and things like that, is there a role on the international stage for getting that done that municipalities can play to kind of put that pressure on, or is it just going to Google and asking them for the money, or asking them to bring it in? Like, how does the municipality get that data center here?
Well, there's the secret. That's the secret, and that's the big challenge that all municipalities have. In BC, we don't have incentives that we can offer to bring businesses. What we can offer is support and help and a welcome community and information, but you know, we're really challenged for tools that we can use, because we're very limited in that. We keep it a very fair playing field throughout BC.
Okay. And I kind of want to ask you also, is there's been in the news a lot recently about the NDP Green sort of new government that's in here, and this is now a new shift for British Columbia. We have a new government in terms of municipalities. Does this new government make you optimistic or kind of nervous, or what's your position when you look at this new provincial landscape for our province?
Beauty of Prince George particularly is municipal politics is nonpartisan politics. So there are party systems in other communities. We don't have that, and that's key for when a government changes, because whenever a government shifts, there's absolutely an opportunity here to get some benefits for the people of Prince George. And I think the key, though, is negotiating our way through the maze of the urban-rural split, because with this last provincial election, it really accentuated the difference between big city British Columbia and rural British Columbia.
A lot of people said it was a Vancouver election, basically.
And that's a challenge. So I've talked with, yesterday I had a chat with Nathan Cullen. He's the MP for up in the Northwest, and he's an NDP MP, but he's got good connections into the provincial NDP. And we talked quite a bit about the urban-rural divide, because that's also a big issue of concern for Canada with the electoral reform. But I think the key is keeping those doors open. And one of the things we saw just before the election was April 8th, 2015, Horgan came up to visit City Council and chat with them. Just last year, Andrew Weaver came up. He did a tour around university. He came, asked about the big issues, and I talked data centers with him while he was here. This afternoon, Sonia Furstenau, who's one of the new one of the new Green MLAs, is going to be in Prince George meeting with the regional district representatives, with the rural people. So those opportunities are there. It's enticing to say those guys good, these guys bad, and I know the most partisan will do that right away, but I have to look at it from, here's the new situation. Let's find out what we can do to make things as good as we can for the people of Prince George. That's what we all do.
And I know, like, one of the things that young people, especially when we think about provincial politics and we think about municipal and where they sort of come in, is for young people, always transit has been a huge thing. And I know I've talked with some young people and they've been saying, well, now that there's a new government, there's an opportunity for the city to get more money to possibly come towards our transit systems to improve our transit even more. Now, obviously, there's a lot of politics involved. There's a lot of very different things involved. But do you think there's a likelihood that we could see our transit system getting a boost or getting something put towards it to help improving it more and more?
Well, there's always a possibility, and we'll see where that rolls out. I think right now the big issue is going to be where the advanced education minister goes, because what Mayor Hall and Council, particularly Councillor Kohler, have been pushing towards is, our university and our college are centerpieces. So there's an education committee that's been looking at destination education for Prince George. And what happens when a new government comes into funding for the Ministry of Advanced Education? And we're really keeping a close eye on that, because it's going to be very important. That brings a lot of students in, it brings international students in, but more, it retains people. You know, the stats say that 70% of students will stay where they finish their degree. And that's critical for Northern BC, not just Prince George, all of Northern BC.
So I kind of want to, I want to ask you this one thing going into the future, and this is sort of my last question here, is what are, what are some things that you're most excited for? Like looking forward and looking for what Prince George has for the next, we're 150th anniversary right now, looking to the next 20 years or 10 years. What are you most excited about for our community?
Well, I really am excited about the data centers. Now that we've got the redundant fiber, that's a huge opportunity for us. Energy is going to be a critical issue. If we're talking about Volvo switching all of its cars over to having electric motors in them by 2019, we better make sure that you can drive a car all the way from Prince George to Edmonton or Prince George to Vancouver.
There's going to be some sad, angry people on the highways.
Absolutely. Energy is going to be critical. And that urban-rural divide. So there's a huge opportunity now with shifts in government to bring that case forward. You know, since 2008, more people have lived in the big cities than outside of the big cities around the planet, and the divide is getting wider. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a critical thing for us to address. How do you get good governance? How do you get appropriate funding when there's not as big a population here as there is in Kitsilano? What do you do? And when there's half of a Prince George moving into Vancouver every 2 years, that rift is widening, and we better pay close attention to that.
I think there'll be maybe like a balancing with Vancouver, like maybe people will eventually start coming back, and like especially with how expensive Vancouver is.
Well, you know, that's always our hope. For any young person, the promise in Canada has always been that you work hard, you get to buy your own house, and that's impossible right now. If you look at the average wage for people in Vancouver versus the average housing prices, it is simply impossible for them to achieve that. Yeah. So that's not the case here. For the price of a house in Prince George, you can get a street corner in Vancouver, right?
Yeah, you can probably get a lot more.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Garth. I appreciate you coming in and speaking with me.
Real pleasure, Grant, always. Thanks.
Our thanks to Councillor Garth Frizzell. Let me know who you want to see come on the show by tweeting me at Grant Bachand. Or also follow us on Facebook by going to facebook.com/PGUpClose. Till next time, thanks for watching.